Investigation of the question whether in the judgment of taste, the feeling of pleasure precedes or follows the judging of the object. The solution of this question is the key to the critique of taste, and so is worthy of all attention. If the pleasure in the given object precedes, and it is only universal communicability that is to be acknowledged in the judgment of taste about the representation of the object, there would be a contradiction. For such pleasure would be nothing different from the mere pleasantness in the sensation, and so, in accordance with its nature, could have only private validity, because it is immediately dependent on the representation through which the object is given. Hence, it is the universal capability of communication of the mental state in the given representation which, as a subjective condition of the judgment of taste, must be fundamental, and must have the pleasure in the object as its consequent. But nothing can be universally communicated except cognition and representation, so far as it belongs to cognition. For it is only thus that this latter can be objective, and only through this has it a universal point of reference with which the representative power of everyone is compelled to harmonize. If the determining ground of our judgment as to this universal communicability of the representation is to be merely subjective, i.e., is conceived independently of any concept of the object, it can be nothing else than the state of mind, which is to be met with in the relation of our representative powers to each other, so far as they refer a given representation to cognition in general. The cognitive powers which are involved by this representation are here in free play because no definite concept limits them to a definite rule of cognition. Hence, the state of mind in this representation must be a feeling of the free play of the representative powers in a given representation with reference to a cognition in general. Now, a representation by which an object is given, that is to become a cognition in general, requires imagination for the gathering together, the manifold of intuition, and understanding for the unity of the concept uniting the representations. This state of free play of the cognitive faculties in a representation by which an object is given must be universally communicable, because cognition, as the determination of the object with which given representations in whatever subject are to agree, is the only kind of representation which is valid for everyone. The subjective universal communicability of the mode of representation in a judgment of taste, since it is possible without presupposing a definite concept, can refer to nothing else than the state of mind in free play of the imagination and the understanding, so far as they agree with each other, as is requisite for cognition in general. We are conscious that this subjective relation, suitable for cognition in general, must be valid for everyone, and thus must be universally communicable, just as if it were a definite cognition, resting always on that relation as its subjective condition. This merely subjective, aesthetical, judging of the object, or of the representation by which it is given, precedes the pleasure in the same, and is the ground of this pleasure in harmony of the cognitive faculties. But on that universality of the subject conditions for judging the object is alone based the universal subjective validity of the satisfaction bound up by us with the representation of the object that we call beautiful. That the power of communicating one's state of mind, even though only in respect of the cognitive faculties, carries a pleasure with it, this we can easily show from the natural propension of man's toward sociability, empirical and psychological. But this is not enough for our design. The pleasure that we feel is, in a judgment of taste, necessarily imputed by us to everyone else, as if when we call a thing beautiful, it is to be regarded as a characteristic of the object which is determined in it according to concepts, though beauty, without a reference to the feeling of the subject, is nothing by itself. But we must reserve the examination of this question until we have answered that other, if and how aesthetical judgments are possible a priori. We now occupy ourselves with the easier question, In what way are we conscious of a mutual subjective harmony of the cognitive powers with one another in the judgment of taste? Is it aesthetically by mere internal sense and sensation? Or is it intellectually by the consciousness of our designed activity by which we bring them into play? If the given representation which occasions the judgment of taste were a concept uniting understanding and imagination in the judging of an object into a cognition of the object, the consciousness of this relation would be intellectual, as in the objective schematism of the judgments of which the critique treats. But then the judgment would not be laid down in reference to pleasure and pain, and consequently would not be a judgment of taste. But the judgment of taste, independently of concepts, determines the object in respect of satisfaction and of the predicate of beauty. Therefore, that subjective unity of relation can only make itself known by means of sensation, the excitement of both faculties, imagination and understanding, to indeterminate, but yet, through the stimulus of the given sensation, harmonious activity, viz., that which belongs to cognition in general is the sensation whose universal communicability is postulated by the judgment of taste. An objective relation can be thought, but yet only so far as it is subjective according to its conditions, can be felt in its effect on the mind, and of a relation based on no concept, like the relation of the representative powers to a cognitive faculty in general. No other consciousness is possible than that through the sensation of the effect, which consists in the more lively play of both mental powers, imagination and understanding, when animated by mutual agreement. A representation which, as individual and apart from comparison with others, yet has an agreement with the conditions of universality which it is the business of the understanding to supply, brings the cognitive faculties into that proportionate accord which we require for all cognition, so regard as holding for everyone who is determined to judge by means of understanding in sense and combination, i.e., for every man. Explanation of the beautiful resulting from the second moment. The beautiful is that which pleases universally without requiring a concept. Third moment of judgment of taste, according to the relation of the purposes which are brought into consideration in them.